St. Lucia, this is Open Mic, and I'm back here with you again. This is the Sunday show. It's a great honor to have the former Prime Minister of St. Vincent, Sir James Mitchell, an old friend, with me today, and I'm quite sure that he has much to share with us based on his experiences in politics for over 20 years. So on that score, I now turn to Sir James, and first, I haven't seen him for some time, and to ask him to give me a little update on himself as to exactly what has he been doing in recent times. Sir James.
Well, Michael, it's a pleasure to see you again. We have some good old fond memories of things in St. Lucia, early life here in St. Lucia years ago. I've watched the progress of your life with great interest. Mine has gone more in a different direction, but also in a bit of business and also in politics. As you know, I'm in the tourism industry. I have the family hotel, Frangipani and Gingerbread down in Betway, in the heartland of the Grenadines. And being in business has been very useful to be also in politics. And since I retired, I have written my autobiography, Beyond the Islands, which has been quite successful. I was glad I retired so that I could do my autobiography.
At what age did you retire, Sir James?
I retired when I was 70. I did 35 years before politics and 35 years in politics, and I said when I got out at 70, that's enough for me.
Yeah, I remember coming to St. Vincent when you started your politics, and you had a house in Kingstown, and you asked me to sleep on the floor on a mattress. That was fine with me. And I watched all the pictures of what you intended to do when you came back from the UK with your loudspeaker, and you started from scratch. You had quite an innings and quite a start.
No, well, I started in the Grenadines when there was no electricity, you know. People can't believe today that places like Mustique, Mustique is the top resort in the Caribbean without any shadow of a doubt.
Without a doubt.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
There's no other place where you can rent a house for 150,000 US a week.
Wow.
You know.
And that still goes on today.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, none of the Grenadines had any electricity. There was not even a jetty. There was no telephones. There were no roads to speak of, etc. So I took those islands from scratch, putting in the infrastructure. As a matter of fact, I can tell you, when I came back from England and I went to the banks in St. Vincent, they chased me. It's a good thing I had a piece of St. Lucia, land in St. Lucia, which I mortgaged and took the money to St. Vincent. In those days, the banks didn't care where you went with the money.
Right.
But since then, and I am now a member of a very interesting international organization called the Interaction Council, which is made up of former presidents and prime ministers. An organization founded by the former Chancellor of Germany, Helmut Schmidt, who passed away a few days ago. Our organization had to pay tribute to him, and we will be represented at his state funeral. And it started by Schmidt and Tamaka from Japan over 30 years ago. And it has continued. We are supported by various governments, like the government of Japan, government of Australia, Canada, and a few others, and the international private sector. We have papers presented to us, and we meet once a year in different venues, and we are hosts of government. I've attended meetings now as guest of the King of Saudi Arabia, the Prime Minister of Japan, who retired, Wen Jiabao, who retired recently, and in Quebec, sponsored by the mayor up there. We were recently in Wales, and we've been to Manama and Hiroshima too. We had a discussion once on a session on nuclear energy, and we went straight to Hiroshima to do it. We of course discuss any of the issues that you want to bring up, and the president of Colombia, ex-president Pastrana, was able to bring us up to date on the treatment of the opposition in Venezuela. And I joined him in resolutions dealing with that. We also have former President of Costa Rica, Arias, who is a Nobel Prize winner, and he's a member. So we have a very interesting organization, and once a year we dealt with. And one has to be able to make a contribution to world affairs. For example, the last meeting we had for the first time 2 new members, the former President of Ukraine and former Prime Minister Zhukov of Russia. And they were going at it hammer and tongs. And the contribution I was able to make was to point out to them, and to Zhukov in particular, with his annexation of the Crimea, that it was a pity when he had that vote, where he claimed he got over 90% of the vote, that he did not permit international observers. If you know you're going to win, let the world see that you are on the right track.
Correct.
So I was able to give that kind of suggestion because I had been head of an election mission in Lesotho, in Africa. Lesotho is a country surrounded by South Africa, the Mountain Kingdom. And I was with Walter Mondale supervising elections in Hungary. And I was part of a team also on the first Sandinista election in Nicaragua. So I know how one should do these proper...
Yeah. So James, you know, just listening to you now, with all what you have done, with your experience, I want to move into an area of isolation for 2 seconds. Right now, Alan Chastanet has won 2 conventions in the United Workers' Party. And this evening, there's a 3rd convention coming up. And assuming that he does in fact win this convention, there seems to be a little discrepancy within the party as a result of the former Prime Minister having to take 2nd place, so to speak. And to the best of my knowledge, I know he has tried, even through you, on some occasions, and some other very qualified politicians, to have in-depth discussions with the individuals who feel that he should not be the leader, despite the fact that has been democratically chosen. Because of your experience, which no one can buy at this stage of your life, what kind of advice, or not advice, but what would be your views on such a situation?
I'm not up to date with the entire situation, but I have some relevant experience in the matter, in the sense that when Sir John was very ill, and the period just before he died, I was here trying to work with the parliamentarians in St. Lucia to sort out the succession. And there were lots of people who were threatening all sorts of things. I remember having a lunch at La Toc with all of the ministers and telling them, Mr. John is still alive. And even after he goes, his legacy will be very much a brand in St. Lucia. And I warned them, if they thought, because they were now very firmly into various constituencies, I say, you go back to the polls and you will be surprised right now how popular you are. You better settle down and form a government, otherwise the people of St. Lucia is not going to tolerate any nonsense. The public is very smart. And so Stevenson became the leader of the party. But there is always a problem with people who take over suddenly in circumstances like that. There's a confusion between what you have earned and which you have worked and toiled over the years to get, and in which you have been just juxtapositioned, where you have to earn your rights. The first thing that I would say, that my friend Steve, and he has friends and family in my constituency of Kanawha, the first thing he's got to understand is that he went to the polls and lost. Now, in my view, the standards around the world we should adopt if we're going to be running a democracy. Pardon me if I sound a bit lengthy on this, but to explain it, look at what happened recently in Canada. The very night that Harper lost the election, he resigned as Prime Minister and leader of his party.
And without cutting you short, and the same thing happened in the UK.
In the UK, it also happened. And all of the people in the various parties who lost resigned. And if the party wants you, they will then decide whether they are accepting your resignation or not. Your hands are very good. Steve would have had a stronger hand if he had offered to resign and let the party say, we still want you.
Got you.
So it goes right back to that.
Got you.
Because look at what happened to the head of UKIP in the United Kingdom. The extremes who want to pull away from Europe. The head of UKIP lost. He didn't get a seat. He resigned that night. But the party refused to accept his resignation. And the party said, in this philosophy we have, or this principle on which we are based, namely withdrawal from Europe for Britain, you are the arch representative of this. And we want you still to lead this cause, not to lead the party, to lead this cause.
Okay.
So there's a difference of being said, I want to be boss.
Yes.
And you want to lead a cause. You know? Right. So the individual should really genuinely ask themselves. Now, the point is, I think that people who have served, parties should find a way to look after them. It is too sad in the Caribbean,
yes,
that when you are no longer Prime Minister, people disregard you. They dump you, as it were.
Yeah.
That's not the party, you know. I'm talking about the public dumping you.
Got you. Got you.
And the whole society dumping you.
So James, we have just come to the end of the first segment of our program. We'll be right back.